Hello and welcome to Ancient Myths of the Common Era, a series where I dive deep into the mythology behind one of the greatest MOBAs of all time, known as Smite. This series will hopefully give you a better idea of who's who in the wide selection of gods and goddesses available in the world of Smite. In today's video, we are going to talk about Apollo, so let's get started.
Easy go.
Apollo is the Greek god of music, truth, prophecy, healing, the sun, light, plague, and poetry. Now that's a lot. He is born of Zeus, the god of lightning and thunder, and Leto, the goddess of womanly modesty and motherhood. He has a twin sister, Artemis, who is the virgin goddess of the hunt, wild animals, wilderness, childbirth, and virginity, obviously being a sworn virgin and all. Living up to the hype of her title of the goddess of motherhood, Leto found the perfect place to give birth. This is because Hera found out about Zeus's infidelity and banned Leto from giving birth on terra firma, or solid land. This included the mainland Greece and any islands. In Leto's wanderings, she came across the new island of Delos, a floating island that was not terra firma, because it was floating, and thus was able to be the birthplace of her children. Because Leto was now able to give birth, Hera kidnapped Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, in order to prevent the birth from occurring by stopping Leto from going into labor. However, the other gods tricked Hera using a necklace that was 9 yards long and made of amber. Thus, having Eileithyia at her side, Leto was able to give birth to Artemis and Apollo. Artemis was born first and then helped her mother to bring her brother into the world. Just 4 days after being born, Apollo was forced to slay the dragon Python. Hera had sent Python to track Leto across the world and kill her. In order to protect his mother, he begged Hephaestus for a bow and arrows. Such a mama's boy. Apollo lured Python into the sacred cave at the Castalian spring, the springs whose vapors give the oracle at Delphi her prophecies. He cornered Python and then killed him. Because Python was the child of Gaia, Apollo had to be punished, and thus Zeus ordered him to preside over all of the Pythian Games, a series of athletic and artistic competitions. In another story, Apollo helped the Trojans defend against the Achaeans in the Trojan War. He shot arrows that were infected with the plague into the Greek camps during their siege of Troy in order to gain retribution for Chryses. Chryses was a priest of Apollo who was insulted by Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces. He was insulted because Agamemnon had captured Chryses' daughter, Chryseis. After Agamemnon's forces were starting to be affected by their plight, Chryses demanded the return of his daughter, and the Achaeans decided it was in their best interest to comply. being threatened by the plague and all. On top of causing the plague, Apollo also helped in killing Achilles during the siege. When Paris was attacking Achilles, Apollo guided his arrow into Achilles' heel. Apollo's mama's boy nature appears plainly when he defends his mom against a mortal's boasting. Niobe, the queen of Thebes, was boasting her superiority to Leto, Apollo's mom. Because a Niobe has 14 children, 7 girls and 7 boys. Sorry if anyone is offended by my assuming their gender. While Leto only has 2, being Artemis and Apollo. If you ask me, being prevented from going into labor and having to find a floating island to give birth on trumps having more children. In response to this, Apollo rallies his sister Artemis, and they kill all of Niobe's children. Apollo killed the boys, and Artemis killed the girls. Amphion, Niobe's husband and the children's father, was devastated and killed himself at the sight of his son's rotting corpses, while Niobe fled to Mount Sipylos and turned to stone as she wept, her tears creating the river Achelous. The creation of Apollo's lyre is an interesting one, to say the least. Hermes was born on Mount Cyllene in Arcadia. His mother, Maia, hid him away after being secretly impregnated with Hermes by Zeus. She had wrapped Hermes in blankets so that she could rest and be at peace of mind while she was asleep. But he still escaped. Hermes ran all the way to Thessaly and came across Apollo grazing his cattle. The baby Hermes then stole a few of these cattle and ran off to a cave in the middle of the woods near Pylos. Inside this cave, Hermes came across a tortoise, which he then killed and cleaned out the insides. He killed one of the cows and took its intestines and strung them onto the tortoiseshell, which created the lyre. Apollo chases after Hermes, but when Apollo approached Hermes' mother, Maia, about what he had done, she refused to believe it because Hermes was wrapped back up in his blankets. After seeing the instrument that Hermes had created, Apollo made a deal with Hermes. Apollo traded his cattle that he had been grazing, but Hermes took in exchange for the lyre that Hermes had invented. A little while later, Apollo mastered the lyre, and it became one of his symbols as the god of music. In addition to the creation of the lyre, there are many other stories involving Apollo and his lyre. One such story is a bit darker than some of the others because it involves a music contest. And yes, music contests are dark when they involve Apollo. You see, Marsyas was a satyr who had challenged Apollo to a contest to see who was the better musician. because Marsyas had found an aulos, which is two flutes put together with one mouthpiece. He had found it on the ground after it was tossed away by its inventor, Athena. Marsyas became well versed with the instrument, which is what brought about the contest because he thought he could best Apollo. Apollo and Marsyas agreed to have the Muses judge the contest. They both performed their pieces, and after they were done, the Muses decided that they were both equal in skill. Apollo could not let that stand, so he decided to go all or nothing and said that they both have to sing and play their instrument at the same time. Marsyas, playing a flute, could not do this and thus lost the new challenge. So because Apollo had been insulted by Marsyas's hubris, Apollo dragged Marsyas to a cave and flayed or skinned Marsyas alive. Marsyas's skin was then nailed to a nearby pine trees. Marsyas's blood then flowed from the skin and created the river Marsyas.